The Capital One Venture cards are some of the best travel cards that you can get on the market. They have 2x multipliers that come with some travel credits. I mean, you really can't top them in terms of just simplicity and efficiency. But there are a few things you need to know before you apply for any of the Capital One Venture credit cards. And that is exactly what I'm going to be going over in today's video. And now is a great time to talk about this because Capital One actually just released their highest ever offer on the Capital One Venture card. We have seen this offer before actually, but they have brought it back, which some people weren't expecting. So it's great to see that it is back. In this specific offer I'm referring to is the Capital One Venture offer of earning 75,000 Capital One miles after you spend $4,000 in 3 months. And it also comes with a $250 travel credit that you can use on the Capital One portal. This really is one of the best offers that you can get on pretty much any card that's around a $95 annual fee or less. So it is a fantastic time to apply for that card. But like I said, there are some things you should know before doing so. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first thing that you need to know is a pretty basic thing, honestly, and that is that Capital One has a pre approval tool that you can use before applying for any credit cards. Now, this is nice because you can find out before actually applying for the credit card. And if you are pre approved, that will greatly increase your odds to get that approval from Capital One. Now, a few things to know about the pre approval tool that at least I've seen online is that there are a few different ways to get there. And so there is a specific pre approval tool that you can just Google and it'll pop up. But I've recently seen that the Venture X is not included when you use that specific link. So one way that I've seen online that you can get that Ventrex included in the pre-approval tool is by simply clicking on one of the Capital One credit cards, and there's a button that will say "See if I'm pre-approved," and clicking on that and going that route is a better option. I would just use like the Capital One Saver, as that should include pretty much all of the Capital One cards that you would want to apply for. Go through that route, see what you're pre-approved for, and it will tell you on that screen, and that will include the Capital One Venture X. Now, of course, if you're just wanting to apply for the Capital One Venture card, then it doesn't really matter, but it is something to know. Now, the pre-approval is nice because, like I said, you can get an idea of what you are pre-approved for, which you'll have better odds with. But just remember that it doesn't guarantee that you will be approved for that card. It's great that you can have an idea without actually having a hard inquiry hit your account. It's just a soft pull. You put some information in and they will give you an idea, but you won't truly know unless you actually apply for the card. So just be aware of that. This also goes vice versa. Maybe it doesn't show that you're pre-approved for the card, but you can still apply and see if you will get approved. Of course, your odds are low, we'll say. It is rare for that to happen, but it is possible. This leads into number two, because if you do end up applying for a Capital One Venture card, or really any card for that matter with Capital One, they will hit you with a hard inquiry on all three credit bureaus. This is something to note because unlike other banks such as Chase, they will only hit one credit bureau. So Chase, in my instance, will only hit Experian. So if I apply for three Chase credit cards, I will have three hard inquiries on my Experian report, but I'll have none on my other two, such as TransUnion. Capital One, on the other hand, said, "We want to leave a mark. We're hitting all three bureaus, and there's nothing you can do about it." You can try and freeze like one bureau, maybe two, and then apply and see if they'll just take one or two of them. But it is a bit risky. It might just deny your application or say they couldn't process it. So it's up to you if you want to try that. Personally, I don't really think it's that big of a deal if they hit all three credit bureaus. I mean, hard inquiries, like no one wants to see them, but it really doesn't have that big of an impact on your credit score. I mean, right after they hit, yes, your score will go down, but it will shoot right back up probably within 2 months as long as you just pay off your card. Now, in terms of just hard inquiries on your account, it's not that big of a deal unless you're really getting up there, like maybe double digits. Or if you're like applying for a mortgage, for instance, then maybe you don't want to have too many hard inquiries on your account. But I really don't think it's that big of a deal. At least in my experience. I mean, I haven't had too many. I think the most I've had at once is probably Experian, I think like 7 or 8 around that range. That was the most I've had. It typically ranges around like 5 to 6. But even then, I've had no issues applying for cards or buying a car or whatever it is. I mean, I haven't experienced anything. So it's up to you. Like I said, I don't think it's that big of a deal unless, like I said, maybe you're in double digits or you're applying for a mortgage, but take it with a grain of salt. However, it is something that you should know before applying for a Capital One card. Moving on to number three is that Capital One can be, let's say, pretty stingy with who they approve for their applications. Now, this seems to be a well known fact throughout the credit card community that Capital One is just very picky. Sometimes they'll approve people with 800 credit scores, and sometimes they won't. Maybe you have like a 650 credit score, they might approve you, sometimes they won't. It really is kind of random. People seem to think that Capital One will approve the applications that are more beneficial for Capital One, such as people who may not pay off their statement right away and they'll accrue some interest, people who are applying not for the welcome offers, but maybe just to build up some credit score with a card that has high interest rates. I mean, it really is unknown to this point who Capital One will approve, but just know that it's pretty fluky. That's why the pre approval tool can definitely come in handy. So it's worth noting that maybe you apply for a Capital One card earlier on in your credit card process. So maybe you only have 2 or 3 credit cards. Now you want to apply for a Capital One card, such as the Venture card. That would be the time to do it. I'll go into more detail on this as it kind of leads into number 5 on the list. So wait till the end for that one. But moving on to number 4, which also kind of leads into this, is not only is Capital One stingy with applications, but they're also stingy with the amount of cards that they will approve for a single individual. Now, what I mean by this is maybe you do apply and are approved for a Capital One card, such as the Saver, the Venture X, but then down the road you want to apply for another Capital One card. Well, that could be an issue. As someone who has the Venture X and I've had it for over 2 years, I've done the pre approval for multiple cards on multiple occasions, and every single time it comes back with, oh, you're pre approved for the Quicksilver card. Well, what if I want the Saver card? Too bad, so sad. Not only is that an issue with additional applications after you already have one, but say you have a card and you want to upgrade that card to a different card, well, that could also be an issue. Now, in my personal experience, I have the Venture X, which is basically like the highest tier Capital One card you can have. But I have seen plenty of times online that if you have, say, a Saver card or a Quicksilver card or even a Venture card, that it can be difficult to upgrade that with Capital One if you want to do so. So maybe you apply for the Venture card because of this amazing welcome offer. Wouldn't blame you there at all. But then down the road, you're like, oh, I kind of want the Venture X card. Well, of course, I would recommend trying to apply for that card separately, as you can get the welcome offer for both of them. They are in separate pools. However, some people don't want to do that. They just want to upgrade to the card, simply put. Well, it's up to Capital One's discretion, and you may not be able to. It can be very annoying that Capital One is this way, but there's just nothing we can do about it. So, as I've stated a million times, it is very important to know this before applying for a Capital One card. And especially the Venture card, as in my opinion, long term wise, the Venture X is a better card. Now, right now with this welcome offer, the Venture I would say is superior because you're paying less upfront than the Venture X. But long term, I would much rather have the Venture X. And that leads into number 5, the last thing I want to tell you guys, and that you should know before applying for a Capital One card, is that really it's kind of like a personal tip in that you should have an end game with Capital One before applying for any of their cards. Now, I will say this really only applies to people who have some sort of credit history or multiple cards, a higher credit score type of thing. If you have a lower score, Capital One kind of buckets you sometimes. So if you're trying to build up your credit, then you might want to apply for a Quicksilver card. And if that's the case, that's totally fine. You might not have an end game, no big deal. But for someone who is more well versed in the credit card game, they already have an established credit score or credit history, I would highly recommend having an end game with Capital One. The reason I say this is because of all the tips I've previously mentioned. I mean, if you want to apply for multiple Capital One cards, well, just be aware that it may take a while. I mean, they might not let you apply for or at least get approved for a Capital One card for a very long time. Maybe you can't upgrade a card for a very long time. Maybe you really want this sign up offer on the Venture because it's only $95 and you get so much out of it. But long term, you want the Venture X. Well, you might not be able to upgrade, you might not be able to apply. So it's just something to think about before you apply for any of these cards. Even if you want to complete the Capital One Duo, which is really one of the best duos you can get out there, which includes the Capital One Saver card as well as the Capital One Venture X. I think it is a fantastic duo, but just know if you apply for one of them, you may not be able to apply for another one for a very long time. So you got to pick and choose which one you would rather have. Maybe right now you don't want to pay that annual fee, so it's better to get the Saver card first or just a cheaper Venture card. Maybe you're okay with paying the annual fee and you want those travel benefits right now, then maybe you should apply for the Venture X first and apply for the Venture or the Saver down the road. And that may take years, even depending on if Capital One will approve you. but at least you planned for it that way because you wanted the Venture X now and that's what you got, or you want the Venture now and that's what you got. So, I mean, it's definitely frustrating. I mean, you think of like Chase and the Chase 524 rule. Of course, you have to think of that before you apply for those cards, but that's really all you have to think about is just the 524 rule. I mean, as long as you're under 524, you can apply for the Freedom Flex, the Freedom Unlimited, a Sapphire Preferred, or maybe just the Reserve instead. But with Capital One, you kind of have to think outside the box. I mean, will I want the Venture X a few months from now? Maybe I should apply for that first because it may be more difficult to apply for later. Maybe I don't want to pay any annual fees right now, but I do want to earn some cash back or stash up some Capital One miles before getting that Venture or Venture X. And so instead, I'll get the Saver card. That card has fantastic earnings and costs $0 and it has no foreign transaction fees. So, as frustrating as it may sound, it's best to at least plan out what you want from Capital One and what your strategy is with them before applying for any of their cards. Now, as always, this is all situational. It depends on the person, what your long term goals are, your strategies, what miles or cash back you want to earn. I mean, there's so many factors into this, but I hope that this video will shed some light on some of the Capital One nitpicky things that they have within their system. It's definitely frustrating, but you should know about all of these before applying for any of those cards. But as long as you know all of this, then I would say go for it. Apply for that venture card. Get that awesome, awesome welcome offer that is really the best welcome offer you can get on any $95 annual fee card or within that range. Or maybe it's not for you and you'd rather secure that Venture X now because you want those benefits, or you don't really care about the Venture card and you'd rather earn those miles or cash back with the Saver card, get that card instead. It's totally up to you as it's all situational. But either way, I hope this video helped bring some valuable information when it comes to applying for a Capital One card, specifically a Venture or even a Venture X. We'll have some links down below to apply for some Capital One cards or even check out their pre-approval tool to see what you might be approved for. So go ahead and check those out down below. Leave a comment and let me know what card would you apply for with Capital One if it was your very first card. And as a reminder, at least at the time of recording this video, that Venture sign-up bonus is elevated to a beautiful 75,000 miles as well as $250 in Capital One travel credit on the Capital One travel portal. So be sure to take that into consideration. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know down below, like I said, what Capital One card you would apply for. Otherwise, that's all I have for you in this one, and I'll catch you in the next one.